Hi, everybody. How's it going? I'm going to officially call this meeting to order at 6:33 p.m. on July 14th, 2021. This is a special session of the Student Senate. Um, Clerk Bridge has been taking roll call as you guys have entered, so we can move past that. Public forum, no one has asked to speak in public forum, so we can move past that. There is no consideration of old business. So now we move into item 4, a consideration of new business. Item A, the clerk shall read.
Act on request to approve FB-64-001 reallocation of SGA student services fee by the authority vested in him. Treasurer James for himself forwards the following act for consideration and vote, requiring a simple majority vote of the Senate.
Thank you, Clerk Bridge. So the author is not here to speak on this bill, but he has asked that Advisor Fonseca speak in his favor. So Advisor Fonseca.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Hopefully you have been enjoying your summer so far and are looking forward to returning in the fall for normal business. Of course, Senate doesn't normally meet over the summer at all, but with some recent decisions from the Kansas Board of Regents, we needed to get our student fees request reapproved by the Senate. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what got us to this position, or why we're here tonight, and then kind of present you the proposal that Treasurer James has forwarded to the Senate for consideration and hopeful approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have as well. There are a few members, some senators who were in those conversations that helped draft the recommendation. So at any time, any of them have anything to fill in, feel free to add in anything that I might have missed. So last spring in the 63rd session, which most of you were not a part of, the student fees proposal was adopted with a $4.07 increase or 1% increase to the student fees allocation. When it went to the Kansas Board of Regents in June, the Regents rejected the increase. And then on the bill, you can also see that they've also rejected, or they also canceled out the allocation that was savings from the RSC bond. I'm going to share my screen really fast so I can kind of show you what I'm talking about so you can kind of visually see this. So we're specifically talking about the middle line. Again, we submitted an increase for a single percent. With the Kansas Board of Regents decision, they adopted a $395.08 fee, which is a $15.84 decrease to the requested amount, or equivalent to $342,889. The intercollegiate athletic fee also went for an increase, and that was also rejected as well. So stop sharing that. So it's looking kind of where we are, the budget shortfall of $342,889. The recommendations are as follows, that the student government will authorize a withdrawal of $220,000 from the Student Services Reserves account. The student fees budget has a reserve of whether it's dollars that are pulled from other organizations' reserves and or just excess dollars. A piece of the largest chunk that was deposited into the account most recently was an allocation of HERF funding, which was a part of the COVID relief package that was approved by Congress, and a portion of that was deposited into the student fees account for the purposes of what those dollars were for. So we took on about $505,000 that was deposited into that account, a part of what came out of the HERF fund. So the recommendation is to pull from our reserves $220,000, which will bring our remaining shortfall to $122,889. To meet that difference, it is a recommendation that we issue an across-the-board cut of 1.62%, which varies based off of the allocation, and I'm happy to provide those numbers if you would like to see them. Specifically to the Sunflower, the Shift-Based Gallery, College of Fine Arts Programming, Graduate School Programming, the Student Government Association, and the Sunflower. So an equal 1.62% cut across all of those. The same will be issued to the Division of Student Affairs. However, instead of us going through each line items from Student Affairs, was recommended that they absorb the rest of the costs, which is roughly about $106,000. And then they make the determination where to pull those dollars from, where to cut the budget from the entirety of the Division of Student Affairs. So they'll still take the 1.62% cut, but instead of doing it across the board, they will make up the $106,000 difference so that it can return back to a zero-based budget. The recommendation from the working group, and that ultimately Treasurer James accepted, was also to sustain the approved allocation from the Educational Opportunity Fund. Those are scholarships that are awarded to students and have, at that point when we were going through the process, have already been committed to students in forms of scholarship because bills were just released and scholarship bills or tuition bills were already formed at that point. So to make up the difference, which was roughly about $3,000, that was spread across the other line items below. So that's the first piece of the bill. The second part is just to authorize the necessary signatures that will enact our funding commitment so that we can make these funding allocations decided tonight. So that is the proposal. To kind of review how we kind of got here. In a couple weeks ago, President Khan issued an executive order that put a working group together that included Treasurer James, the Vice President, the Director of Health and Wellness, as well as the Chair of Budget and Finance, Senator Kirk, Senator Bastain, and Senator Balaji were part of those conversations, helped make the recommendation, and that Treasurer James ultimately accepted that recommendation to forward to you all. So that is what you are seeing today. And I'm happy to stand for any questions that you all might have.
Are there any questions for Advisor Fonseca? Okay, seeing none, we can move.
I think Senator Kennedy, but you unmuted yourself, but we can't hear you, Senator Kennedy. I think you're still muted. Nope. If you want, you can put your question in the chat and I can read it out loud and answer it if that's easier.
In the meantime, Senator Glenn, did you have a question?
Yes. Is there a reason that it was just the Shift Space Gallery, the College of Fine Arts Programming, Graduate School Programming, and the SGA and the Sunflower that were chosen to get the 1.62%? Is those the only things that could have gotten cut, or were there other things that were
That's a good question.
Thought of?
So everyone is taking the cut because those departments, so the Shift-Based College of Fine Arts, they're not a part of the Division of Student Affairs. So what we did and what the recommendation is everyone will take the 1.62% cut. So in retrospect, that $122,000 has been made up with these cuts. However, because those, the ones that were listed out, Shift-Based, SGA, Sunflower, they're not a part of the Division of Student Affairs. We just lay those out as to say, you're going to take the 1.62% cut, and then from Student Affairs, those 13 departments collectively will make up the 106. A part of that is a conversation that Dr. Hall, who's our Vice President for Student Affairs, will take back to her team to find out how to make up those cuts. So some departments may get cut more than others because last round in student fees in the spring, we did already issue cuts to some departments who did get a decrease to their funding. So she may kind of manipulate a little bit how those dollars will be made up. But it's the same practice, or not same practice. Last year, when our initial request was denied by the university president at that point, this is the same process we went through. Is instead of going line item by line item, we just gave the request to the Division of Student Affairs to figure out how are you going to make up the 106 based off of operations and services that you might need to come in from that perspective. So Everyone took the cut. However, those departments were laid out separately because they're not a part of student affairs, while student affairs will make up the 106,000 from those 13 departments internally. And there was
Senator
a
Diggs.
yes.
What will the remaining balance be in the Student Services Reserves account if the $220,000 is withdrawn?
Let me do some math very fast and I can tell you. $442,000 will remain. Last year, we also approved a cash transfer from other departments to make up so we have a policy that says every year we have to take a % of student fees and put it into the reserves. The committee last year took it from departments reserves instead of taking actually from student fees. So when that money is deposited, with all the subtractions and everything, there will be a balance of $539,000. There's a section in the student fee statute that requires us to get to 10%, which is about $1 million. So we're still in the process for the next couple of years to get to $1 million in order to potentially deal with other shortfalls or other things that may come from there. So if this is approved and goes through, the balance will be $539,000. And then Senator Kennedy, your question was, is this to cover for 2 years as was written on the proposed bill? So this will deal with fiscal year 2022 and it will set the standard for the next 2 years. Right, the next student fee cycle in the spring may change the number as they go through that process, but this will be right for everyone to kind of know, right? We allocate funding for 3 years at a time. So this will be the base for 3 years unless the Student Fees Committee next year makes a different recommendation. And ultimately, if the Senate approves that recommendation, it will change. But this will be the base for fiscal year 2022 and for the next 3 years, unless there are changes throughout the year.
Senator Glenn, do you have another question?
Yes, I apologize if you already said it. I think you mentioned something, but not a figure. You said that part of the relief package that Congress approved went into our reserves last year. Do you have like a figure of how much went into our reserves and like what percentage of this 220,000 is from that?
So there was a $504,000 deposit that was made from the relief package. So let me do that math really fast for you. So from that 504, this from the 220,000 that's being recommended, there'll be 284,000 from it. But right, I want to remind folks that it's the entirety of the number. So that money has already been, the HERF dollars have been deposited into the account. So the account itself is larger. So I would say it's almost a little under half of what was deposited from just the HERF dollars, but a little less than a third from the overall student fees account, student fees reserve account.
Are there any other questions for the advisor? Okay, seeing none, we can move into the discussion period. I will hear any discussion that we have in affirmation of this bill. Seeing none, any discussion in negation of this bill? Seeing none, we will move into the voting period. The clerk will post the Google form in the chat. Please fill out all of the questions on the form and submit it, and we will count up the votes.
Or 22 in favor, 2 against, and 1 abstention.
The motion passes. So we will move into the next item on the agenda. Item B, the clerk shall read.
Act on request to approve SR-64-003, appointment of standing committees of the Student Senate. By the authority vested in him, Speaker Tubak for himself forwards this appointment for consideration and vote, requiring a simple majority vote of the Senate.
Thank you, Clerk Bridge. Seeing as I'm the author of this bill, I will just say that I will stand for any questions. Are there any questions for me? Okay, seeing none, we can move into discussion. I will entertain any discussion in favor of this bill. Seeing none, any discussion against this bill? Seeing none, we'll move into the voting period. The clerk will post the Google form in the chat. Please fill it out, and we will read the vote.
Or 25 in favor, 0 against, and 1 abstention.
So with that, the bill will pass. And that is all that we have on the agenda for consideration of new business. So before we move into adjournment, Advisor Fonseca has asked if he could give you a couple of items of information. So I will yield the floor to him.
Thank you, Speaker Tubak. This was quite possibly the easiest meeting you all will have in your entire year of service. So thank you all again for being here. I just want to remind everyone that the Senate will come back into session officially for the fall session starting August 18th. So just be prepared for that. You will not have committees that first evening. We will have another gathering at the President's house for our ice cream social that we do every fall semester. So that will happen. I'll send more information out to you all about that when we get closer. And then committees will begin the 25th of August, and then normal Senate will continue after that. So I just want to provide that information to you all as we prepare for the fall semester. Additionally, there are, just want to put that out there, there's still a couple more vacant Senate positions open. There are 12. So if you know folks that would be interested, I would encourage you to encourage them to apply. And final thing, first Senate meeting will be jam-packed with nominations. So be prepared for all of the appointments that will be made at the first Senate meeting. We have lots of senators to appoint, 2 Supreme Court justices, and then a cabinet position to appoint as well. So just be prepared for a long rodeo of a meeting from the fall as we move on from there as well. So that is all that I have for you all. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your summer and the next break after that. If you have not enrolled in classes yet, please make sure you do that. And if you have any issues, please let us know and we can help you maneuver through those.
Yes, Senator Dix, you have a question?
Just real fast, Mr. Fonseca, if I could ask you to follow up, is there an easier way that we could begin communicating with members within our committees? And could you please restate the date that committees will officially begin?
Yeah, so committees will begin August 25th, which is a second week of the session. Your chairs should be reaching out as we finalize some communication methods internally. Now that committees were approved today, so the chairs should be reaching out to determine best ways to execute some communication efforts. Most official channels will be through email, but I know that some committees last year had group meetings. Some committees utilized a bunch of different things. So your chairs should be in contact with you now that they know who their members are to determine those ways to get those communications figured out.
Great, thank you, Advisor Fonseca. One last thing before we adjourn the meeting, I would like everybody to fill out the attendance sheet or the final roll call, just to make sure that everyone is still present. And then once everyone has done that, the meeting will stand adjourned. I would also like to say that if you have not been checking your student email, please do so. There are some of you that have been reached out to by members of student government or otherwise that have not responded, and we'd like to hear back from you as soon as possible. So please be checking your student emails. And otherwise, everybody have a great rest of your summer, and I will see you in August.
Good night, everyone.